Way back in 2005, I was invited to my first high school party. All I'd wanted since I'd turned 16 years old was to experience alcohol, friends, and stupidity all in the same place, and after a long, boring year, I was finally able to. I arrived at the party with Paul at 8 p.m. and immediately got to drinking. We danced, laughed, and avoided vomiting, but after being there a few hours or so, we began to get bored and realized that we really hadn't been missing much over the past year. We finished the last of our drinks and headed out the door. However, just as we were leaving, I heard somebody shout my name from the corner of the room. I turned to see Tom standing there, swaying from side to side and happily slurring out his words. I decided to stay a little longer to see what he wanted. After talking a while, I felt as if I'd known Tom my whole life. He was only a year older than Alex, but he seemed much more mature. He was very open about everything that had happened and didn't seem to mind talking about it. He told me that his foster family were not the nicest of people and never really seemed to care about anything he did. They just made him feel like an outcast and treat him more like a stranger than a son. He told me that he hadn't heard from his mother since she disappeared and doesn't know whether she's dead or alive. He even mentioned that he was failing in school, but he didn't care anymore. His life was just falling apart. When the party was over, I told Tom he could sleep at my house so he didn't have to make his way back to that home he hated so much. I set out the futon for him and watched as he collapsed into a drunken slumber. When I woke up the next morning, Tom was already awake and holding something in his hands that I hadn't looked at in over 2 years. "Where did you find this?" he said. "I haven't seen that in a long time. Forgot I still had it." "Yeah, okay, but where did you find it?" He spoke urgently. "I found it a couple years ago. It was floating downstream in Oakshale and I managed to fish it out of the water." "Why?" "This is my mom's jewelry box. The photo was taken on my 7th birthday, the day my dad left." "Shit, man, are you being serious? Did you find this box before my mom left me?" Yeah, I did actually. When I got home a week later, Alex told me that your mom was gone." "This is so fucked up. Look at this drawing. That's me and my family, my foster family, I'm sure of it. Even the house looks the same." At this point, none of us knew what to think. This all seemed impossible. I pointed to the man drawn hidden into the background and watched as Tom's face lost all color. I had no choice but to ask him about the man. I told him everything that Alex and I had been a part of back when I was 12. About Alex seeing him but me being spared. I mentioned to him about the scratching and the strange conversation with Alex back in Paul's grandparents' house. He listened to everything I had to say, and it seemed to give him a little more comfort. Maybe knowing that he wasn't the only one to experience these things made him feel a little better. After a long, drawn silence, Tom began to speak. "When I was younger, I would see him all the time. He would come to my window, find me at school, watch me as I tried to sleep. He was everywhere. As I've gotten older, I've been seeing him less and less, but I do still see him. He usually appears at night, a tall, scraggly, kind of looking old man. His eyes are the things I remember most. Pure black, with the most weird glow behind them that seems kind of relaxing. It draws you in. But you're full of sheer terror. It's horrible." Before I could say anything to Tom, he picked up the photograph from the box and showed me something that was written on the back of it. "Follow the stream to 66. I'd never noticed that written on the photograph before. Tom asked me if I would take him back to where I found the jewelry box in Oakshale. The way I saw it, I really had no other choice but to say yes to him. We set off walking to the stream with a hope of finding something, anything, to do with Tom's mother, but I don't think any of us really knew what to expect. We had been walking for about a half an hour when Tom stopped and pointed to a sign in the bushes for a shortcut to Oakshale. Upon seeing the sign, I was filled with a sense of fear that I've never felt before. I just really didn't want to take that shortcut. I told Tom that I had a strange feeling, like deja vu or extremely weird, vivid dream, but he told me not to worry. As we were nearing the sign, I noticed a white spotted bow on the floor. It was playing out exactly as I had seen it. I made my way back onto the main road and refused to go anywhere near the trees by that sign. I didn't want to think of what might have happened in those woods. Eventually, we arrived at Oakshale and began to follow the stream. As we neared an old wooden bridge, Tom pointed to a small house on the opposite side from us. He headed towards the front door, but there didn't seem to be a house number anywhere. "This must be 66, Tom said quietly. We made our way along the front path and knocked on the door. To this day, I still find it difficult to believe what happened when the door opened. Tom's mom answered the door and stared at both of us. "Can I help you?" "Mom?" "I'm sorry, I think you're mistaken." I stood silently as Tom exchanged words with a woman who was once his mother. Mom, it's me, Tom. Are you okay? What happened to you?" "I am not your mother. I don't have any children, so you stop saying that." At this moment, a man I had never seen before approached the door and chimed in on the conversation. "What's going on here? What do you kids want?" "Dad, it's me. Where have you been? Where have you both been? I don't understand." We must have stood there confused and shocked for nearly 20 minutes before Tom's dad ended the conversation. "Look, we couldn't take it anymore. It's your turn to deal with it now. We like it here, and I think we're safe. So, never come back, okay?" The door slammed shut, and Tom began to cry. We left that house and made our way home in silence. As we headed back through the trees to reach the main road, I turned around to look at the house one last time. Standing on the bridge as clear as day and staring right at us was a tall, black-eyed man pointing at the stream. Every muscle in my body tensed up, and I felt sick and dizzy, but I didn't mention what I'd seen to Tom. That was the first time I'd seen the embodiment of my worst fear. I wish I could say it was the last. A month or so after going back to Oakshale, I was given a school report to do on local history. I had been doing research, working my way through the years, and was going through hundreds of old newspapers. I stumbled across a paper that was dated August 17th, 1958. The main headline was detailing the death of a young boy who had drowned near his family home. A headline from a paper dated May 8th, 1960 was of another young boy who had drowned whilst playing near a local brook. Over the next 6 years, 5 more child deaths graced the front page of local newspapers. Then in the winter of '66, the killer was caught. On November the 12th, 1966, the front page headline boasted the quote, "It's the only thing I'm good at." Solomon Wallace had killed 7 children over the course of 8 years and had finally been brought to justice. His final victim was a 7-year-old Kimberly Matthews. She was lured away from her back garden where she was playing and been drowned in the brook running along the back of her house on Kershaw Street, the same street that I lived on. Her body was found nearby after an elderly woman noticed the white spotted bow she often wore, tangled up in the weeds. During the final court hearing of the brutal killing spree, a disgruntled father of one of the children shot Solomon Wallace 3 times in the back. After being taken to the hospital and placed in the intensive care unit, his nurse returned to his room only to find that it was empty. After weeks of search, Solomon Wallace was never found. Most people believe that he died from the gunshot wounds, and some people believe that he got away with it scot-free. However, some people like me are still unsure to this very day. Things gradually got worse after our visit to that house. The occurrences became more common and sleepless nights were a part of our lives. But it wasn't until meeting Michael 3 years back that things would become worse than ever. It was the day of my 20th birthday, and I'd been persuaded to go for a meal with my family. I was never one for family events. Being forced into spending time with relatives you barely know doesn't really feel like a present, but it made my mom happy, so I agreed. This happened to be my worst birthday yet. I hadn't exactly been feeling great for the past year or so, and neither had Alex. The experiences involving Solomon had become more frequent and were really starting to take their toll on all of us. Well, except for Paul, he seemed to be doing fine. About halfway through the meal, I excused myself from the table so I could go to the bathroom. I had just finished washing my hands when somebody approached me. "You are Jack, aren't you?" "Yeah, I am. Do I know you?" "I don't think so. I'm Michael. I live down the road from you." "Oh yeah. Another kid who hid away for his whole life," said snidely under my breath. "I guess so. I actually used to see you playing out when I was younger. I was never allowed out, you know, because of him. You and your brother were pretty gutsy." "Him? So you know then too, huh? Same shit, different story?" "I know about it. So does my mom. We never seen him, but my dad has. Him and a couple of his friends were a part of it back in the late 70s. He gets to people, you know. He fucks them up. Drives people crazy. That's what he did to my dad's friends. Either you or one of your little friends will be gone soon." "You shut your fucking mouth. We'll do fine. We have been for the past 8 years and will be when it's all over. We just have to ride it out." "Oh, sure you will. Just make sure you keep in touch with your buddies daily. The most tortured usually suffer in silence." For the next few days, I took the advice of Michael. I made sure to keep in contact with Tom while me and Alex looked out for each other. Tom seemed to be doing pretty well, considering he'd been the worst out of the three of us, but Paul wasn't doing so well. He told me that something bad had happened and that things were getting worse than ever. Up until this point, Paul had never mentioned to me that he experienced anything out of the ordinary, so this was a complete surprise. I'd asked him once, but he denied ever seeing anything. I guess he was suffering in silence. Paul was looking worse than ever when he told me the story. Very thin, pale, and evidently tired. He told me that it was around 3 a.m. when he was woken up by a breeze coming in through the window. He expressed bewilderment at how the window had been opened because he keeps it locked at all times. He got out of the bed, ran over to the window straight away and tried to lock it, but the latch was snapped off. After closing it shut, he slowly walked back to his bed and sat down. That's when he appeared. Paul had seen him at his window before, but not like this. His face was not as distorted as usual. He could make out his beady black eyes and a look of sick happiness on his twisted face.